What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have a jam-packed show for you all, as we have lots of volleyball to get into, such as UC Irvine men's volleyball, avenging last week's loss against Stanford and beating the Cardinal at the Bren. How did they do it, and will they be able to keep up their consistency? And we have a lot of big-time matches this week, such as number 3 Penn State at number 2 UCLA. The Nittany Lions are also on a roll. They have not dropped a set in their 4 matches they've played. Are the Nittany Lions for real, and can they beat UCLA on the road? Also, I've got a movie review for Set Point. What? Movie review? Set Point? What does that mean? You'll have to find out. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And what is up, everybody? Hope you are all having a great Monday morning or Monday afternoon, Monday evening, regardless of where you are listening. Either way, thank you all for tuning in to Set Point. Welcome to another edition of Set Point, episode 125. I kind of feel this is a milestone, but it's not really. I think the milestones are basically episode 50 to the century mark to the 50s and the new century marks, but that's just my opinion. If you want to have the 125 episode special, so be it. But without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. iSports Radio is sponsored by the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get the second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. They are on social media, as they are on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California _Warriors, and they are on Facebook by typing the word Southern, then California, then Warriors. The second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Kit has founded and managed Background Check International Businesses since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier, because it's always good to have a background check for new hire-ons. It just makes everything run a little bit more smooth. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. They do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces, as they are on Facebook by typing in the word Background Check International, then dash, then BCI in the search bar. They also have a website, www.bcint.com. And IE Sports Radio is on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And they're also on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio. They also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com. And at iesportsradio.com, you can check out their Patreon link. They have 5 different tiers, with the first one starting out at $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout-out from all 32 of IE Sports Radio shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, IESRU, And you even have a chance to be featured on a segment of The Defining Moment, the show that has pretty much made iSports Radio what it is. And it is hosted by Larry Beebe as well. So the reason being is for the last 7.5 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, iSports Radio has continued to be by the fans for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you all for continuing to make iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And we have to congratulate iSports Radio's Fan of the Month, in Chris from Massachusetts. He is a Bills fan. He is obviously fired up as the Buffalo Bills won their playoff game against the New England Patriots. Also have to give a shout to Bay Area Raised Apparel and Marcus Losgreat for being Patreon supporters. We appreciate you two keeping the lights on, and we appreciate everyone's support of iSports Radio. And without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. So we're actually going to start things a whole lot differently. So we're actually going to start with the movie review. So last week I was able to carve out some time, despite me having to work or going back to work, and I was able to watch and finally watch The Miracle Season. So if you do not want spoilers on this movie, here's your chance. Spoiler alert in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now for the review of The Miracle Season. So, this movie actually came out in 2018, and I am a little embarrassed to have not watched this movie up until now, so I feel a little guilty. This came out on April 6th, 2018, and it was a very good movie. I heard a lot of good things about it, and this was actually based on a true story, an actual team, an actual women's volleyball team or girls volleyball team in Iowa, and it was very heartwarming. So this women's volleyball team, I forget the name of it, and the West High School in Iowa. So West High School is the reigning state champion, and they returned most of its players. And they had this one talented volleyball player known as Line, or Caroline, as most people like to call her. So Caroline Found, or Line as they call her, was this upbeat, happy-go-lucky volleyball player, and she was just super-duper happy and super-duper upbeat and whatnot. So she was that happy-go-lucky player, and everyone liked her. Everyone liked her, not just because she could really play some darn good volleyball, but because she brought a lot of energy to the team. So the team's season opener, West's season opener, against their crosstown rival, they wound up losing in 3 sets. And everyone in the locker room wasn't really disappointed because they had the uplifting spirit from Caroline Found. Unfortunately, a night, I think it was the day after the game, there was a party going on, and then afterward, Caroline Found was going to meet up with her mother, who was in the hospital, who is battling some sort of cancer disease. But on the way there, and this is going to be the sad part, and this is the sad part of the movie, Caroline Found got into a motorcycle accident or a scooter accident. She got into an accident and she passed away. So it was really saddening, and that was really heartbreaking. And I advise you, if you watch The Miracle Season, have a couple tissues by you. I said that on the Set Point Twitter account. I highly recommend having some tissues. I didn't cry, honestly. I promise you all I didn't cry. But I will say that that was probably the sad part of the movie. It was very sad. It was not only sad for viewers watching, but it was also sad for the team, because the energy, the morale booster of the team was gone, taken away, and even the coach was drained emotionally. It got to the point where the team just could not play games. They had to forfeit most of the games that they were scheduled to play. And it was very disappointing, and I understand why. And when the team got back into the gym, they just could not play, considering it just wasn't the same without her. So it was a sad scene to see. And then West did muster up the courage to playing some volleyball. They actually got to play a match, but unfortunately they wound up getting crushed in 3 sets. I shouldn't say crushed, but I digress. So they wound up losing, and the dad of Caroline Found asked the head coach, Cathy Bresnahan, how's the team doing? And she said, we're not doing good. There's no easy way to say this. And then she said, Cathy Bresnahan said that we have to win out the remainder of our games if we want to qualify for state. So the team had to basically find a new leader. And that new leader was Kelly Flyer. So Kelly had to basically step up for the team, and she basically did, because she had to be the setter. She had to set the ball, considering that was Caroline's position before she passed away. So she had to step into that position. It's basically like a second-string quarterback stepping into the first-string quarterback after that quarterback is out for the season. So Kelly and the rest of the West High School team managed to muster up the courage to finish off the rest of their season, and they, believe it or not, they actually went the rest of the season in terms of the regular season undefeated, and they did qualify for state. Then in the state playoffs, I guess it went quarterfinals, then semifinals, then championship, and then you're the champion. So in the quarterfinals, West managed to win their first matchup. I want to say they won it in 4 sets, if not 3 sets. Regardless, they won it. And then that semifinal match, they actually had to win that one in 5 sets. So they won that one, and they had to face their rival in the championship game. I believe their championship's name was City High School. I'm honestly drawing a blank on it, but City High School was their rival. So it basically is like any sort of miracle season. So the rival school of West High School, City High School, they managed to take the first 2 sets. And I kind of figured that this was going to happen. And yes, it is City High School, the rival of West High School. So City High takes the first 2 sets, and everyone's thinking, well, West had a good run. It was a good run for West High School. But before the match happened, Coach Bresnahan actually took the mic, and she said, we need to live like line. She basically said Caroline would basically meet new people, she would reach out to other people, and she would basically make friends even with strangers. And that's what everyone did before the match. Now back to the match. City High School went up 2-0 on West High School, and it looked as if City was going to win because they were the top seed and West was the underdog. But then the 3rd set, West won the 3rd set, and then West won the 4th set, and then the 5th set, it was just down to the wire. City High School had championship point, but then the players served it into the net, which was the worst thing that could happen for any volleyball player. Then West High School was able to clinch the match, and that was it. They won for Caroline Found, and it was great. I knew this was going to happen before the championship match started, and it was just a great scene. And great scene, great ending. It basically was a true miracle season. So, all in all, I really loved this movie. It was very heartwarming, and it just goes to show you that you never know what can happen to a player. And even Coach Bresnahan, even though she didn't like Caroline's happy-go-lucky attitude all that much, she loved Caroline as a player, and she basically had that morale and that spark to the team. So, all in all, it was just a fun movie, fun, heartwarming. You will definitely like this movie if you are a fan of volleyball. So I definitely recommend seeing it, and I definitely recommend having a box of tissues by you. So, all right. So all in all, I enjoyed the movie, and I'd watch it again. And who knows? Maybe I'll watch it again and again every single time, and maybe I'll live tweet it. Maybe. All right. So that is that for the Miracle Season Review. Alright, so I should have actually mentioned this before the show started, that when I played the introduction of Set Point, that will be the end of the review. So now that review is out of the way, now let's jump back into some NCAA volleyball action. We'll start on the women's side of things as we have some transfer news. So I'm actually going to put up a poll for Set Point on the Set Point account, and I'm going to have you, the listeners/fans, vote on if I should continue to do my transfer news format this way, or if I should just focus on the big-time transfers, just like my buddy Andrew Hagenbaugh did for the Soccer Scoreboard Show. Just because I don't want to go through all the transfers and say, oh, this player went to that school. And instead of oh, Maddie McKissick transferred from Georgia Tech to UCLA. That's big because da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I'll put up a poll on if you want me to have that format. So be on the lookout for that. But to the transfer news in the standard format. So the first transfer from last week all the way to today, we have Jaden Nemhard as she transfers from Kansas State to Long Beach State. This is actually a good pickup for Long Beach State just because they did lose Erica Lovett to Tennessee, but now they get this player, and I'm sure she could be very promising. If not, Long Beach State has a lot of young players, and they also have Kashana Williams, who is a freaking beast of a player. So honestly, I don't think Long Beach State is going to be skipping a beat in terms of losing Erica Lovett, and having Jaden Nemhard really helps out. Second transfer is Jenna Howard, a setter, as she transfers from Washington State to UNLV. That's a good pickup right there, considering she has experience on that Power 5 school, and she's had experience facing some of the top schools like UCLA, Stanford, Washington. The list goes on and on. UNLV did not qualify for the NCAA tournament, but with a setter like her, that could maybe change. We'll see, because the Mountain West Conference is kind of a revolving door. It used to run through Colorado State, but now it's kind of a revolving door ever since UNLV won it last year, and then Boise State won it the year prior, so there's that. Then we have Brooklyn Sink, who transfers from Missouri State to Xavier. She is an outside hitter. That's a good, nice little pickup for Xavier. And also, Jenna Nemhard is an outside hitter for Long Beach State as well. Forgot to mention that. On the topic of Long Beach State actually got another top player. This one actually comes from Nebraska, and she's a middle blocker. This is Callie Schwarzenbach, who transfers to Long Beach State. So this transfer I kind of understand just because Schwarzenbach was on Nebraska, and the former assistant coach for Nebraska was Tyler Hildebrand, and Tyler Hildebrand is now on Long Beach State. He is the women's volleyball head coach. So I kind of understand Schwarzenbach transferring to Long Beach State. But this is actually a very good pickup just because they did graduate Miranda Cañez, and they have a lot of good middle blockers. And Long Beach State will have its work cut out for them, but I think having Schwarzenbach will be just another great tool. And she's familiar with Hildebrand's system, and I think she'll be able to adapt really well. And she has the nice little relationship with Hildebrand, so there's that. Then we have Connolly Renfro, who is a libero. She transfers from High Point to Lipscomb, so nice pickup right there. High Point has some stud athletes and some stud volleyball players, so good, nice little pickup there. Then we have Bailey McMenamin, who is a setter. She transfers from Minnesota to Loyola of Chicago. So, Adam, I don't know if you're listening, but Loyola of Chicago women's volleyball got a little bit better. So it's always good to have a nice setter just because, obviously, if you lose a setter, you have another one ready to go. Yes, that new setter has to learn the system, but McMenamin has experience with Minnesota, having been in the Big Ten and whatnot, and having learned under Hugh McCutcheon. Then we have Molly Johnson, an outside hitter who transfers from Michigan to Mexico State. Nice little pickup right there for the Aggies, just because, like I said, the Mountain West Conference is a revolving door, or it's been a revolving door ever since Colorado State got knocked off. And getting a caliber player from a Power 5 school is quite nice. So I think New Mexico State can benefit from this. Then we have Kaylee Ammons, who is a middle blocker. She transfers from Charleston Southern to Palm Beach Atlantic. So nice little pickup right there. I'm going to be a little honest. I actually don't know Palm Beach Atlantic and Charleston Southern as much as the standard Charleston Southern and Palm Beach Atlantic fan, but it's still a good little pickup considering the middle blocker is always a solid position to have. And I think Palm Beach Atlantic can benefit from this. Then we have Taylor Aguano, who transfers from Chaminade to VCU. She is a setter. Nice pickup right there. Then the big-time transfer from the Big Ten, we have Arca Davis, who transfers from Ohio State to Minnesota. This is a very good pickup for Minnesota. First of all, they nab a conference rivals player. Second of all, Davis had herself a very good season for Ohio State in her freshman year. I think Davis can learn the system quite well. Will she be a Regan Pittman type of player? That all depends on what she wants to specialize in terms of offense or defense. But I think this is a good little boost in terms of talent for Minnesota. And Minnesota always is that perennially good top 16 team. Then we have Ava Francis, an outside hitter who transfers from Arizona to Virginia Tech. So that's a solid little pickup right there. Virginia Tech being in the ACC, getting a outside hitter from the Pac-12. So Virginia Tech obviously has their work cut out for them considering the ACC has improved. So they're basically going to start to jump in the fray of getting talent. So that's a nice little pickup for Virginia Tech. Then we have Lexi Thomas, an outside hitter. She transfers from UAB to Sam Houston State, so good pickup right there. And then we have Gigi Carvacho, an outside hitter. She transfers from Ole Miss to Virginia. So Virginia has been getting some good pickups in terms of transfers. And like I said, the ACC has improved, and they're going to have to stay with the pack if they want to actually have a decent chance of winning the ACC or at least making the NCAA tournament like Miami did. And North Carolina. Then we have Jenna Splitt, a setter. She transfers from Iowa to Butler, so she goes from Power 5 to Big East, so that's a nice pickup right there. Again, setter is a valuable position just because you can't have too many setters. Heck, maybe Butler can run a 6-2 offense. We'll see. Then we have another transfer going to Virginia Tech. This is Carl Lewis, a middle blocker. She transfers from Maryland, so this is a nice little pickup right here. They got an outside hitter, now they got a middle blocker, and that actually is the last transfer that I have as of late. So those are some nice pickups right there. I think Long Beach State had themselves a solid little pickup, solid pair of pickups. They solved their middle blocker and outside hitter problem, as I think that they will be able to benefit with Schwarzenbach and Nemhard. So I think for Long Beach State, they scored. And then Minnesota getting Arca Davis was also huge. I was very surprised she transferred to another division foe, or conference foe. So I think for Minnesota, that's a big pickup right there, considering they need to fill the role for Stephanie Samity as she graduates, and we shall see what the Golden Gophers can do. So that is that right there for all the transfer news. Let's jump on into some NCAA women's volleyball coaching news, as we had quite a bit of coaching news. So the big one happens to be Texas women's volleyball, as they hired Jordan Larson as an assistant coach. This was released on Tuesday, January 11th, as the highly decorated and collegiate volleyball player Jordan Larson joins the Texas women's volleyball coaching staff. She is a 3-time medalist, and she was the captain of the 2020 U.S. Olympic gold medal winning team, as she is, like I said, an assistant coach. She was a 3-time All-American, and she was a part of the Nebraska 2006 national championship team, as Tanya Johnson is no longer the assistant coach at Texas. She is now the head coach at LSU. And Jarrett Elliott says this is a home run hire. To have the most accomplished outside hitter in the history of USA Volleyball come to be part of our program is so exciting. From our athletes that aspire to be part of the national team to have that eats, drinks, and sleeps volleyball will be an incredible opportunity. Jordan loves the game, wants to give back, and will be a great mentor to all the ladies that come into our program. So I totally agree with Elliott. This is indeed a home run hire, and I think this is going to really benefit Texas, especially with such a promising roster. They have Maddie Skinner, they have Logan Eggleston, they have Jenna Gabriel. This is going to be a promising Texas team. While Texas fans were overjoyed for this hire, Nebraska fans unfortunately were they didn't take the news all that well. And I understand that Nebraska, sadly, will get to see one of its former players on the Texas coaching staff. But I think Nebraska fans should be happy for Larson, considering, well, for starters, one of your former players is going to be a part of a big-time program. And yes, if Texas and Nebraska meet in the NCAA tournament like they have the past 2 seasons or tournaments, it'll be fun, and Jordan Larson will be able to expand her horizons, and who knows, I think there could be some players from Texas that could make that U.S. women's collegiate volleyball team, and Jordan Larson would be the perfect player to help groom them. So I think this is a great hire, an absolute amazing hire for Texas women's volleyball, and honestly, I think the Longhorns have something special brewing. It's a little too early to tell, but I think Texas looks super promising, not just in terms of its players returning, but in terms of its coaching staff as well. And like I said, Larson served as the captain for the first U.S. indoor women's volleyball team to bring home a gold medal, and she was named the most valuable player and best outside hitter in the tournament. And she also won silver at the 2020 Summer Olympics and the 2016 Rio Games. And this kind of points to the signs of Jordan Larson retiring from professional volleyball. And while I am sad that Jordan Larson has retired from the volleyball game, or in terms of playing, I'm at least happy to see that she's going to be giving back to the game, and she's taking her talents to a very promising organization. I get Nebraska fans want to see her coach at her alma mater, but why not expand the horizons? And I understand Tyler Hildebrand did leave, so that position, assistant coach position, is kind of vacant at the moment, but they'll eventually get that filled out. Like, with all the volleyball coaching news, I would not be surprised if they landed Misty May Trainer. But I highly doubt she'll want to go to Nebraska. No offense to Nebraska fans, because she's got a home in California, and she's got kids in California, so yeah. So that is that for Texas and Jordan Larson being hired as assistant coach. The next bit of coaching news was Mike Johnson being added to the Stanford women's volleyball coaching staff. So this was released a few days ago. This was released on Friday. So this was released courtesy of the Stanford Athletics Twitter account, or Stanford Athletics. They said, former Notre Dame coach Mike Johnson has been named assistant coach for Stanford women's volleyball, as announced on Friday, courtesy of Kevin Hamley. I am excited to welcome Mike, Liz, and their family to the farm, said Hamley. Mike is a pro and brings tremendous experience to our program. He is a proven trainer and recruiter. As a head coach, he has elevated programs to places they have never been in their history. So Johnson actually replaces Gary Mono, who stepped down from the position following the 2021 season. So I like this hire. I don't think Johnson got a whole lot of credit for this season just because of all the losses that amounted. But Notre Dame had a very competitive team. I just think that they got behind the 8 ball early and often, and I think personally it did not help their morale and it did not help them physically and mentally. But honestly, Notre Dame had an underrated team. And had they pulled off that win over Louisville, it would have been freaking incredible. And Mike Johnson would be hailed as a god. And he probably would have been on that Notre Dame team still coaching. But regardless, Stanford now has him. And this is a great hire. And he has had success with Notre Dame in the past. Unfortunately, this year kind of went a little south for him. But it is what it is. So Johnson joins the farm staff as he says, I am thrilled to be joining the phenomenal staff and players at Stanford. I believe in Coach Hamley, and I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity. My family and I can't wait to get to Palo Alto and work in tireless pursuit to bring another national championship to the farm. He has 10 years of experience as a head coach, including stints at Xavier from 2010 to 2014, Austin Peay in 2009, and then obviously Notre Dame. He is 187 and 105 as a head coach. So I really think he could bring some fire to the Stanford women's volleyball coaching staff. And Gina, I don't know if you're listening still, but I think this is an incredible hire if you ask me. I wish Mike Johnson would not have left the Notre Dame position. I hate how that ended, but it all worked out in the end for Notre Dame, and it all works out for Mike Johnson because now he's a part of a successful program. And he was also an associate head coach of Cal Poly and assistant coach for University of Washington. I want to say that 2004 was the year they went to the Final Four and won the NCAA championship. I'd have to double check, but regardless, Mike Johnson has a lot of coaching expertise, and he's been pretty much around the world, so he knows what to expect. So he knows the pressure of Stanford women's volleyball, and he knows how good they are year in and year out. So I think Johnson is going to aid well in Stanford women's volleyball. So the last bit of coaching news comes from the Big Ten, and this is actually a coaching departure. Cathy George has retired as Michigan State's women's volleyball coach, as she is the winningest coach in Spartan history. This was released also on Friday, as George had announced her retirement. She had coached Michigan State for the past 17 seasons, and she coached overall for 35 seasons, as Michigan State will be looking to find the new head coach, as she was actually the first woman to lead a team to the NCAA Division I Final Four in terms of women's volleyball, as Michigan State made the Final Four in 1989, and in her 17 seasons at Michigan State, she amassed a 667, in her 35 years as a head coach, she amounted a 667 and 457 mark. And in her 17 years at Michigan State, she amassed a 302 win record and a 233 loss record, which was quite impressive. And she also coached at 4 different schools as well. So, honestly, the accolades also include that she took Michigan State to the tournament, which also included 3 trips to the Sweet 16 and an Elite 8 appearance. She says, my time at Michigan State has been a wonderful experience. This is our home, the place we've raised our family, both at home and our volleyball family. Our success through the years was always the byproduct of incredible contributions of so many different people, coaches, support staff, administrators, and the local community all pulled together for the best interest of Spartan volleyball. And she says the decision to retire after 35 years as head coach was an emotional one. Coaching is extremely rewarding profession. Watching student athletes develop and excel beyond their own expectations is amazing. But it's also a demanding profession which requires an incredible amount of energy and focus. So, the fact that she's continued to coach for 35 years and the fact that she has been coaching at Michigan State for 17 years is quite incredible. And I understand how taxing that can be. So I do wish her the best in retirement, and I wish Michigan State the best going forward when it comes to finding their new head coach. So that is that right there for all the coaching news in terms of NCAA women's volleyball. Now let's jump on over to the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. As most of y'all are probably wondering, when is Teran going to talk about NCAA men's volleyball? I got to get the NCAA women's volleyball out the way just because we've got some big news, and I can't let this news pass by. So there weren't too many upsets in terms of the NCAA men's volleyball matches from week number 2, as it was basically expected to see most of the favorite teams win. There was one upset as number 15 UC Irvine took down, tied for number 12 Stanford in 4 sets. So the first set, Stanford never led, as UC Irvine pretty much was leading throughout most of the set, and for them, I think UC Irvine also led by as many as 6 in that first set. It looked as if UC Irvine was going to dominate, and they were going to say, oh, that loss against Stanford the first go-around was kind of fluky. But then UC Irvine kind of let up. Stanford tied the set at 23-23. Everyone in the Stanford Cardinal or the Cardinal faithful were starting to believe more and more. But unfortunately for Stanford, the hammer known as Francesco Sani was able to get back-to-back kills to give UC Irvine set 1. Set 2 was basically all UC Irvine, even though they trailed in the early stages. They were able to take control of the match in the later stages of set 2. Now, set 3, UC Irvine had led most of the set. It looked as if UC Irvine was going to sweep their way to victory over Stanford, but then Stanford tied it at 20-20, and then after UC Irvine led 21-20, that was it. Stanford scored the next 4 points. They led 24-21. UC Irvine calls timeout, and then UC Irvine scores the next 2 points, but Stanford was able to clinch the match, or clinch the set in that third set, as it was quite amazing to see Stanford having that resilience. So, set 4, Stanford led early, but then UC Irvine took the lead, and fast forwarding to the later stages of set 4, it was tied up at 21-21. I was seeing this match, and it was just blow by blow. I thought this match was going to go 5. I thought Stanford was going to pull out the resilience. A part of me wanted to see that 5th set, but unfortunately, self-inflicted wounds hurt Stanford as UC Irvine scored 4 of the last 5 points to win set 4 and the match. So those 4 points that UC Irvine scored, they were all Stanford errors. So the first Stanford error came off of a service error. Then the second one, which wasn't really an error on Stanford's part, this was basically something that UC Irvine did incredibly. UC Irvine got a service ace, and then Stanford had another service error which gave Stanford match point. And then on the final point, it was a hitting error from Stanford. So unfortunately for Stanford, they just could not capitalize and tie the match at 2-2. They instead lose 3-1, and they lose their first matchup of the season as UC Irvine avenges their loss from last week and pulls out the victory. UC Irvine was led by Hilir Heno as he had 18 kills, only 2 hitting errors, and a 457 hitting percentage, which was very incredible. Also have to give credit to Sani, who had 14 kills. Even though he only hit 182, he still was quite clutch for UC Irvine. He also had 2 service aces along with Connor Campbell and, Hilaire Heno and Cole Gillis. I should also mention that Connor Campbell had 5 kills as well, and Doug Dahm had 6 kills as well, along with Cole Gillis. Cole Power, a transfer from UCLA, had 13 digs, and all in all, this was probably the kicker of the match. UC Irvine hit 300, and they did not have a set that they hit under 200. Now, Stanford was kind of the opposite. They only hit 155 on the night, and other than that first set, Stanford did not have the greatest hitting night. Second set, they hit 115. Third set, they hit 0. Fourth set, they hit 192. Like, if there was a chance for Stanford to even the match, it was in set 4. They had tied the set at 21-21 in set 4. But again, those self-inflicted wounds hurt Stanford a lot. Even though they didn't have as many service errors as UC Irvine, Stanford just pretty much let UC Irvine off the hook. I'm not trying to say Stanford didn't deserve to win or UC Irvine didn't deserve to win, but Stanford did have its opportunities. Will Rotman was the only player in double digits in terms of kills, as he had 10 kills. Kevin Lamp had 9 kills. Ethan Hill had 7 kills. Luke Turner had 6 kills. And Nate Gates had 5 kills. Justin Louis had 14 digs. And all in all, Stanford, I don't know if it was just Stanford being a little intimidated playing on the road, but I don't think Stanford looked comfortable. So, all in all for Stanford, they still have a lot to learn. Unfortunately for Stanford, they also lost to UC San Diego on the road in straight sets. This happened on Saturday, so it was a quick turnaround for Stanford, and UC San Diego won its first match against Stanford since 2011. So, unfortunately for Stanford, it was a week to forget after they had an incredible first week of going 3-0. But Stanford does pose somewhat of an underrated threat. I think this week was just one of those weeks for Stanford, and I think they could rebound from this quite well. They just have to just brush it off and just say, we're on to the next one. So, UC San Diego was very impressive in their win. It was kind of to be expected. I kind of expected UC San Diego to win, but honestly, those Tritons, they hadn't really had too many reps. They unfortunately could not play in the UC Santa Barbara Invitational due to COVID-19 precautions. So the fact that UC San Diego was able to respond and post a big win at home against a ranked opponent was good stuff right there. So I think for UC San Diego, they finally got to see what they were truly all about. And then in terms of some other matches, in terms of the quick hits, we had Penn State defeating Grand Canyon, or GCU, in straight sets in both matches. Honestly, Penn State continues to be incredible. I think they are definitely for real, and they have a big test the next 2 weeks. They have big tests the next 2 weeks because they face some really stiff competition, and they're not playing up in the rec hall. They're playing in California, so it's basically going to be showtime for Penn State. Then we also had Hawaii taking down Edward Waters. So for those that don't know, Edward Waters is a new program. They made their program debut against Hawaii, which was definitely a daunting challenge for Edward Waters and the Tigers. They have 14 freshmen out of 16 players, and they have 8 players that are international. And obviously Edward Waters lost in straight sets, but the fact of the matter is that Edward Waters made its debut against a perennial powerhouse. They were not afraid to go toe-to-toe with the national champions, and they did all that they could to try to scrap some points against Hawaii. So the fact that Edward Waters made its debut against the number 1 team in the nation, it was incredible to see despite the scoreboard showing otherwise. So I think for Edward Waters, I wish them the best going forward, and I think they'll grow from this. Obviously, you get better by playing great teams. You don't get better by playing those meh teams. So there is that right there. Hawaii, on the other hand, has a 50-match winning streak against teams not from the Big West Conference and the MPSF. So basically teams from the East Coast or Midwest are basically of that. Basically the EIVA, the MIVA, you get the rest. You get the point. So I think that's incredible right there. That's kind of your mindless stat of the day, that Hawaii has won 50 straight matches against teams not from the MPSF and the Big West Conference. So good stuff. I would like to see Hawaii play Penn State. Unfortunately, Hawaii is not on Penn State's schedule and vice versa, but we could see them in the NCAA tournament. It still remains to be seen if Penn State is the true for real, but this week will test Penn State. So some of the other quick hits. Number 2, UCLA made its season debut last week and beat Princeton in straight sets, not at the Poly Pavilion. They played in the small gymnasium at UCLA. Regardless, they won 25-12, 25-22, 25-22. UCLA has a big test in the Big 12 or Big 10 Pac-12 challenge this week against Ohio State and Penn State, which I'll be getting into a little bit later. Pepperdine kicked off its season with 2 sweeps over Erskine, and then Long Beach State, number 5, swept Harvard in its season opener on Saturday. They're actually playing Erskine in a little bit. I was thinking about going to that match, but I realized I did not want to just because I wanted to do set point. So there was that. And then NJIT kicked off its season last weekend. Unfortunately, they lost to both Lewis and Loyola, but they did take a set off of both of those teams. I really think NJIT is underrated. I think they have an incredible team. I think their team, I don't think it's explosive like Penn State, but I think they do show promise. I think they're the best team that has a chance of beating Penn State in a conference game, but I wouldn't hold it to it against that. But for NJIT, I think they are promising. Them taking a set off of Loyola and Lewis is no easy feat. They also could have forced a 5th set against Loyola. They were kind of in the thick of that 4th set, but unfortunately Loyola kind of pulled away. And then against Lewis, they were basically outmatched after they won the 2nd set. So NJIT I've still got some promise for, but they have to kind of show it. They have to kind of work a little harder, but I think it's definitely doable for NJIT. So that is basically your quick hits right there in terms of the NCAA men's volleyball scene. Before we head to a commercial break, we have the AVCA/NVA Division 1/2 men's volleyball coaches poll, as 15 through 11 consists of Stanford at 15, McKendree at 14, UC Irvine at 13, USC at 12, and Ohio State at 11. Then 10 through 6 consists of BYU at 10, Loyola of Chicago at 9, UC San Diego at 8, Lewis at 7, and Grand Canyon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Long Beach State at 5, Pepperdine at 4, Penn State climbing up to number 3, UCLA at number 2, and your number 1 team in men's volleyball is, in terms of the Division 1 and 2 coaches poll, Hawaii. So those are your top 15 teams, and honestly, I'm incredibly surprised that Penn State has continued to climb. Yes, they've played top 10 competition. Yes, they've swept both of those top 10 opponents, but I think that Penn State does have a very promising program, and I think they have a special program, and if they pull off sweeps against USC and UCLA, they are indeed the real deal. Because remember, Penn State returns all of its starters, or all of its players except for one from last year. I think Penn State can definitely make a run to the Final Four, but this is their biggest test. Next week, I also hope to see them when they play Long Beach State. That's going to be an incredible matchup. Definitely expect to see Set Point on the scene for that matchup. It's going to have some fireworks. It's going to knock some socks off. And then also don't sleep on Ohio State as well. I think Ohio State has been quiet just because they haven't played the most stiffest competition, but they too also participate in the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge as they play UCLA and USC. And then next week they play in the Battle of the Bigs, the Big Ten versus the Big West, as they play UC Santa Barbara and Ohio State. As I also hope to see Long Beach State versus Ohio State. I get to see former set point guest Kevin Burge. We'll have to see, though. We definitely need to have set point on the scene for both Long Beach State matches. We'll see if that fits into my schedule. But regardless, that is pretty much all of your NCAA men's volleyball news from last week all the way to the coaches poll today. We'll take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we'll have the preview of the NCAA men's volleyball week 3 matches. Boy howdy, we've got ourselves quite a number of good ones. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' the NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' the NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson. It's your boy Dentarius Live.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Thank you all for still tuning in and listening, such as Gina G, and we saw Larry B in the chat room. We also saw Mike Pat and Adam Karnick. Sorry for not acknowledging y'all early on. I really do appreciate those that tuned in or that are tuning in, such as Gina, as she's also watching the Monday Night Football game, as let's just say it's not going well for the away team. Regardless, let's get on into the second half of this show, as we've got a lot of NCAA men's volleyball matches to go over for Week 3. Like, holy guacamole, we've got lots of big matches this Friday and Saturday. That's where the matches are the biggest. The Friday and Saturday matches for this week are huge, like huge. Like, we have 10 ranked-on-ranked matches, and I want to say that 2 carry the 3 minus 4. I'm just kidding, I'm over-exaggerating. We have 4 matches that are basically top 10 matches, so which feature 2 top 10 teams. But regardless, it's going to be a big week on Friday and Saturday in terms of NCAA men's volleyball. So we'll start on Friday we'll start in chronological order. We'll start from I wouldn't call it least interesting just because it's ranked on ranked, but we'll go it with the least ranked on ranked versus up to the most ranked on ranked. So we'll start with BYU and UC Irvine. So BYU and UC Irvine play on Saturday, and they also play on Friday as well. So BYU is 0-2 to start, 0-2 to start the season, as they lost to Penn State in their season opener both times in straight sets. But we all know how good Penn State is. Once again, that's a team that returns most of its players from last year, as they take on UC Irvine as they play at the Smith Fieldhouse in Provo, Utah. So this is a big matchup for UC Irvine, coming off of that win over Stanford. Gina, I'm sorry I have to mention that, but UC Irvine 3-1 with 2 of those wins coming against Lindenwood, or no, 1 win coming against Harvard and the other one coming against Lindenwood, and then the other coming against Stanford. So UC Irvine is led by Francesco Sani and Hiller Heno, who have 62 and 63 kills respectively, as those two have been pretty much the two-headed monster. I think that UC Irvine is going to have their work cut out for them against a BYU team. Now, BYU, remember, this is a BYU team that lost half of its roster to graduation, as BYU is led by David Gardini, who has 17 kills, Alex Asu has 13 kills, and Luke Benson has 11 kills. While UC Irvine has had more quantity matchups, BYU has had the stiff competition against UC Irvine, in comparison to UC Irvine, just because they played those Penn State matches, they played on the road. They almost took a set off of Penn State, but unfortunately it was to no avail, as BYU lost on the road to the Rec Hall. But now it's basically it's going to be a different atmosphere for UC Irvine. Yes, they have played on the road earlier this year, but now they're going to be playing out of state. They're going to be heading down to Provo, Utah to take on the Cougars. So I think personally it's going to be a big matchup for BYU. This is kind of these UC Irvine and BYU are kind of those conference teams that are like in the middle of the pack. They're not bad, but they're not great. Because BYU is basically in the shadow of UCLA and Pepperdine, while UC Irvine is in the shadow of Hawaii and Long Beach State, and maybe UC San Diego. It all depends on what's happening with UC Santa Barbara and what's happening with UC San Diego, and then we obviously have to include CSUN as well, but I digress. So for me, I think this is going to be a big barn burner of a matchup. I would not be surprised if UC Irvine came out fired up. I just think BYU having the advantage at Smithfield House, it's a raucous atmosphere, and then it also is tough to play in a different altitude and different city and state. It's just going to be so different. So we'll see if UC Irvine is up to the test. Then in terms of top 10 matchups, we have on Friday, we have number 6 Grand Canyon heading down to beautiful San Diego to take on number 8 UC San Diego. This is a top 10 matchup right here, as this features the number 6 Lopes taking on the number 8 Tritons. So Grand Canyon for the time being is led by Camden Gianni, who has 53 kills, while Hugo Fisher has 45 kills, and then Christian Janke has 21 kills. So there's that. As a team, Grand Canyon is hitting .276, but you have to remember that they took on Penn State, which is a very talented team, and Grand Canyon lost both of those matchups against Penn State. So Grand Canyon takes on UC San Diego, who just started its season last weekend as they beat Harvard and Stanford. They are led by Kyle McCauley, who I've seen personally. I saw him in his junior college days. He leads the team in kills with 31, while Ryan Ka has 20 kills, and then Logan Clark has 16 kills. So for me, UC San Diego will have the advantage in terms of playing at home, but you also have to consider this. You have to look at the body of work that UC San Diego and Grand Canyon have. Granted, UC San Diego is at a little bit of a disadvantage just because UC San Diego lost that first week of the season due to COVID, and then Grand Canyon had to play McKendree, and then they got to travel to Penn State to play Penn State. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out the way that they wanted to, but Grand Canyon did learn a lot about their team. I think this is going to be a very good matchup right here. It's the battle of two top 10 teams. What more could you ask for? And these two teams are kind of the third banana, or basically the third banana of their conference. I talked about how UC Irvine and BYU were middle of the pack. I think Grand Canyon could probably be the third best team in the MPSF. And as for UC San Diego, they have potential to being the third best team in the Big West Conference, but they are going to have to prove themselves against some of these other teams in order to take down the Hawaiis, the Long Beach States. Because if you all remember last year, UC San Diego did beat Hawaii in the Big West Conference tournament in the semifinals. It was a huge win for the Tritons, probably their biggest win in program history as a Division I program. So I think for UC San Diego, a win over Grand Canyon would be just as huge, especially at the Rimac Arena. We'll have to see how the Tritons fare against Camden Gianni. Gianni is a huge, big-time player, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the table. So that is that right there for Grand Canyon and UC San Diego. Then, jumping over to Friday and Saturday, we have Long Beach State traveling to Illinois to take on number 7 Lewis and number 9 Loyola of Chicago. So Lewis managed to play last week against St. Francis and NJIT. They won both those matches despite dropping a set to NJIT. And then they also played Maryville last week as they beat them in straight sets, which was unsurprising. Lewis is led by Tyler Mitchum, who has 35 kills. Cole Brillhart has 27 kills. John Davis, for the time being, has 19 kills. And all in all, Lewis is hitting .412. But again, look at Lewis's body of work. Early on, you're going to be hearing me say this a whole lot, unless it's Penn State, as Lewis has not played the greatest of competition. They've only played those three teams in Maryville, NJIT, and St. Francis, and they aren't really considered what we call ranked competition. I'm not trying to say those teams are bad, and I personally have a soft spot for NJIT, but for me, I think Lewis is now going to get challenged when they meet Long Beach State. Though for Long Beach State, they're going to have their work cut out for them just because this is their first road trip. And honestly, this is going to be a big road trip for Long Beach State, as not only do they have to play Lewis, they have to play Loyola of Chicago. Now, Loyola did not play last week as they didn't have any matches scheduled, but the previous week they played Hawaii. They lost the first matchup in straight sets, but then they won the second matchup. Or no, they lost the second matchup in 4 sets. They did win a set off of Hawaii, which was a convincing set. As Loyola is led by Cole Schlofhauer, as he had 20 kills on the season. Parker Van Buren has 19 kills, and Colton Brooks has 16 kills. This is a Loyola team that returns a majority of its players from last year. This is a promising Loyola team that I think can do some damage in its own conference. The question is, can they do damage against Long Beach State? That still remains to be seen, considering, obviously as of right now of this show, Long Beach State is playing Erskine. Currently, Long Beach State is led by Clark Godbold, who has 14 kills. Alex Nikolov and Spencer Olivier each have 8 kills. Now, Alex Nikolov, that is a new name right there. I did not know who he was until I saw him on the box score. And I was thinking, this guy actually has some promise. And I think he can do some damage for Long Beach State. He also had 4 service aces in the win over Harvard. So I think Long Beach State can benefit from him, Olivier, and Godbold. So for me, what's going to strike Long Beach State the most is their offense, or the one running the show, as Aiden Knipe is the setter. And for those of you that are putting 2 plus 2 together, Aiden Knipe is the son of Alan Knipe, the head coach of Long Beach State men's volleyball. So, and then also you have Mason Briggs, who is basically their floor general or their defensive dynamo at libero. You also have Shane Holdaway, who can really perform well as a pin hitter. So you got to watch out for him. And then Grant Morochi and Calvin Sanborn had some good minutes. Like, Long Beach State is still probably trying to figure out a set starting lineup just because they have so much talent. But now they're starting to use it and pick out who are the top players. So I think for Long Beach State, this is going to be a challenge against Lewis and Loyola. But I at least expect Long Beach State to win 1 match. I'm not trying to be a homer just because Long Beach State is my alma mater, but I really do think Long Beach State has promise this year. They return a lot of players this year, man. So, and you never want to count out any Alan Knipe coach team. So there is that right there. Long Beach State's matchup for Lewis is slated for Friday, while their match against Loyola is slated for Saturday. Now we have the Big Ten and Pac-12 challenge. So I'm basically going to just preview all 4 of these teams, just because the Pac-12 gets to play the Big Ten twice, and vice versa. Basically, USC plays Ohio State and Penn State, and then UCLA gets to play Penn State and Ohio State. So we'll start off in terms of the lowest ranked team, as USC is 4-0. They managed to beat Erskine last week, and then they also beat Princeton as well. Again, they have those 2 wins over UC Santa Barbara, which was very impressive. They were road wins, I was very impressed that they won on the road. USC is led by Sam Coburn and Simon Gallus. Gallus has 51 kills, while Coburn has 40 kills. Coburn is a transfer from UCLA. Brandon Browning, Coburn's teammate from high school, has 26 kills, and then Liam Schroeder has 26 kills as well, and Lucas Frasrand has 21 kills to boot as well. Chris Hull leads the offense as he has 160 assists. As a team, USC hits 341. While USC has put together a strong 4-0 start, this is probably their biggest test. They play Penn State on Friday, and then they play Ohio State on Saturday. If USC can get at least one win, and if not, they could be competitive against Penn State, they could prove themselves as a solid MPSF team. Do I think they could win the whole MPSF? Absolutely not. That still remains to be seen, just because, well, USC has to play UCLA, and they've got to play Pepperdine, then they've got Stanford, which could probably be challenging, then they've got the great arm of Camden Gianni and Grand Canyon, then they've got BYU. So you have to factor that into USC's schedule as well. Jumping over to the Big Ten side of things, or the MIVA side of things, is Ohio State, as they have comprised a 3-0 record, but it hasn't really been the most impressive 3-0 record, as the Buckeyes are led by Jacob Pasteur, who has 31 kills, Samuel Clark has 20 kills, and Martin Lallement has 19 kills. As a team, for the moment, they are hitting 319 while their opponents are only hitting 40, but I expect that to change. So Ohio State will be getting out of its comfort zone. They'll be heading from Columbus all the way down to Southern California or Inglewood or wherever they're going to actually play this one. They're going to play at Pauley Pavilion. They're not going to play in the small gym at UCLA. So just got to throw that out there. But they're going to be playing in Inglewood. So this is basically a big test for Ohio State. If Ohio State, like USC, can get at least one win against USC, or if they can make it competitive against UCLA, then they could prove themselves as a dark horse from the MIVA. Again, I think Ohio State has the potential to win some matches in the MIVA, but I don't know if they're on the level of Lewis or Loyola. It still remains to be seen, just because Ohio State has some talent. I like Kevin Birch as a head coach. He has a great pedigree, and I think he does do an excellent job. And I think for Ohio State, they are kind of on the rise. It all depends on how they do in this little, matinee. And then we have Penn State. Penn State, the number 3 team in the nation. This is, it seems like all my matches of the week involve Penn State. My match of the week is number 3 Penn State at number 2 UCLA. That's going to be on Saturday, while Penn State USC is on Friday. UCLA will play Ohio State on Friday. I just need to make note of that. And then USC plays Ohio State on Saturday. So over to Penn State. Penn State, like I said, they return all but one of their players from last year, and that one player didn't even really get to play a whole lot, as Penn State is led by Brett Wildman, who has 44 kills, Cal Fisher has 40 kills, Sam Marsh has 30 kills, and Toby Ezionu has 24 kills. I hope I pronounced that correctly. As a team, Penn State is hitting 404 while holding their opponents to 204. Now, Penn State does have the benefit of playing really good competition. All 4 of their opponents are top 10 opponents. BYU twice and Grand Canyon twice. So Penn State obviously is getting their big tests early and often. Next week they travel to UC Santa Barbara and Long Beach State for the Battle of the Bigs tournament or round robin. Regardless, they are basically getting in those big matches, just because I hate to say this about the EIVA, and this is no offense to those EIVA teams, Penn State is probably the most dominant team in that conference. I'm trying to compare the dominance of... It's basically like Clemson back when they had Trevor Lawrence in college football. That's basically what I describe Penn State. They are basically Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. That's probably my most fairest comparison. Or the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. Except I think Penn State can actually go deep and actually win a postseason game. I digress. But regardless, Penn State has a lot of promise this year. I have been singing praises about the Nittany Lions, and boy howdy, I just can't wait to see them next week. But they do have a big test. against UCLA, and they cannot overlook USC. Just because USC is not on the level of themselves and UCLA does not mean USC can be overlooked. I think USC can challenge Penn State a little, but I think Penn State will come out in the end. If anything, USC will probably just win one set. If they win more than one set, then I'll eat crow. But I would not be surprised if Penn State were to pretty much just sweep their way to victory. I think USC can make the matchup close against Penn State. I think they can make it a little respectable. But all in all, I think Penn State comes out on top. Just because Penn State has, once again, a very promising team. They look so dominant early on. And what's not to like about this Penn State team? I don't know if Penn State has won an NCAA men's volleyball championship. I actually don't know that off the top of my head. But this would probably be, if there's any year that Penn State can challenge anybody, this would probably be the year. Just because Hawaii lost most of its starters, even though they returned a good chunk of its team. Long Beach State is still trying to figure things out. We still don't know if UCLA is of the contender or pretender category. And then we still have not seen Pepperdine take on some super stiff competition. Pepperdine does play Princeton and UC Santa Barbara this week. As this, the matchup against UC Santa Barbara is actually going to be a rematch of the of the NCAA tournament. So that's going to be a fun little matchup right there. So definitely do look forward to seeing that. As for the matchup against Princeton that UCLA played in, it was kind of expected. I am not overly surprised. Unfortunately, they don't have their box score, so I can't really determine who led the way, even though it does have their leaders as Kevin Coburn, the younger brother of Sam Coburn, led the way for UCLA with 11 kills. J.R. Norris had 6 kills, and Cole Ketcherzinski had 6 kills. UCLA is known for being a strong serving team. I think the Bruins can do some damage in terms of serving, and they have some studs that can really jump out the gym. But, again, they're playing. This is probably their first biggest test of the week, or of the season as of right now. And it still remains to be seen if UCLA has the dominance, because against Princeton, they really had their way. They had 7 aces compared to Princeton's 4. The blocks were what really swung the momentum to UCLA, as they had 10 to Princeton's 1. The digs were dead even, and as a team, UCLA hit 406. I guarantee UCLA will not have the same success, unless, of course, they have just a straight-up ballin' night against Penn State and Ohio State. I feel that UCLA does deserve to be the number 2 team, but now they have to show it. They have to show they deserve that number 2 ranking. They have to show that they are deserving of that, and the same can be said for Penn State. They're number 3 in the nation, but now they have to prove that they're number 3. Because, again, they have those 2 matchups at UC Santa Barbara and Long Beach State, and this is the best competition that Penn State's going to be having as of right now. As once EIVA conference play hits, then don't be surprised to see Penn State pulling off sweep after sweep after sweep. After the first half of EIVA play, Penn State will play Ohio State, which does not count as a conference game. It's basically a little rivalry game. But I think that's also kind of going to be a good little matchup right there. A nice little tune-up matchup for the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes, as it's always nice to have that little rivalry of Penn State versus Ohio State, especially in volleyball. But I'm really excited to see Penn State take on UCLA. I hope to find a live stream for that matchup just because I want to see the action and not just go off of the play-by-play action on the website. So I think for me, I'm super excited for Long Beach State not Long Beach State, UCLA versus Penn State. I definitely am excited for Long Beach State, Penn State for next week, but that's for next week. We still have to get through this week. But that is going to do it for Week 3's NCAA men's volleyball matches. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Set Point for this week. Thank you all for tuning in. Without any further delay, it is time to drop that beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you're listening live, I appreciate you. If you're listening on the playback, I appreciate you. If you're listening at work, I appreciate you. If you're listening at any point of the day, I appreciate you. Heck, even if you were listening to this at night, I appreciate you. Big shout to the chat room, Mike Pat, Adam Karnick, Larry B, and Gina G for tuning in. I really do appreciate you all tuning into the live chat. I really do appreciate everyone that also listens live. There will be timestamps in the playback version, as I will definitely be updating that later on tonight. And then on the next day, I'll be putting out my In Case You Missed It of my show for this week. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great rest of the week. Enjoy the sports. Enjoy the volleyball action. I don't know if I'll be doing the SoCal Supreme Sports Show on Friday, just because I have work and I'm going to have to shuffle that around. But we shall see. Just take care, everybody. Stay safe. Be a kind person. And I will see you on the other side. Be on the lookout for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Have a great night, everybody. Peace!